This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
أهلا بكم من جديد. قال مصدر في الحكومة الصومالية أن مقاتلات أمريكية.
According to a Somali government source, U.S. fighters have bombed 4 new targets in southern Somalia. The Associated Press said that Hussein Adid, Somali's deputy prime minister, called on U.S. ground forces to move in to pursue al-Qaeda suspects and supporters. Meanwhile, Norway, Italy, the European Union, and the United Nations criticized the United States for the recent bombings, which have killed more than 31 people.
The U.S. fighters are once again in Somalia's airspace. This news comes 13 years after the United States forces launched wide-scale military offensive operations in the country. During that time, the U.S. forces had more setbacks than victories. Somalia has been on the priority list of the United States administration for a long time. Somalia was used to counter what Washington had described as the influence of the former Soviet Union in the region. In addition, the U.S. sent its forces to Somalia in the name of maintaining security in the region in the so-called War on Terror. In the aftermath of the 1992 military victory that was followed by the liberation of Kuwait, the United States looked at the region of the African Horn to expand its influence, saying that its national security is linked to the security of the Strait of Eden and the Indian Ocean. During that time, the U.S. launched Operation Restore Hope in Somalia, but it failed to stop the war between the warlords and secure humanitarian aid. In 1994, the U.S. forces withdrew from Somalia after they were defeated militarily and politically. In 1998, U.S. installations were targeted in Tanzania and Kenya. In 2000, the U.S. forces were also targeted at the port of Eden. In the aftermath of the September 11th attacks, the U.S. decided to put Somalia on its list of targets in the name of the War on Terror. General John Abu Zaid was assigned to oversee what is referred to as the comprehensive military plans for the region of the African Horn. In order to isolate and clamp down on what is described as al-Qaeda's expansion in the region, Washington established military bases in Djibouti. In 2006, the U.S. accused the Somali religious courts of sponsoring and harboring al-Qaeda leaders. Consequently, the U.S. provided military assistance to some warlords against the religious courts, but its plan backfired. The religious courts had denied any connection with al-Qaeda and its leader Osama bin Laden. At the beginning of this year, Ethiopian warplanes aided by American maps and satellite photos had repeatedly flown in Somalian airspace, indicating that the U.S. was trying to return to Somalia, but from a close distance this time. The U.S. had deployed warships along the Somali coast in order to pursue religious courts leaders, saying that it supports the Ethiopian invasion. Meanwhile, Ethiopia's Prime Minister, Meles Zenawi, who tries to distance himself from Washington, expressed embarrassment for the U.S. support. The Ethiopian army was used to accomplish what the U.S. had failed to do. The U.S. wanted to achieve national security at home by using foreign forces overseas.
Meanwhile, Somalia's interim president, Abdallah Yusuf, discussed in Mogadishu with the former president, Abed Qasim Salad, ways to restore security and stability in the country and the deployment of Arab and African troops in Somalia, and ways to replace the Ethiopian forces.
Generally, we discussed issues of interest. We also discussed ways to restore security and stability in Mogadishu. It is very important that the international community and the Arab and African countries fulfill their obligation and send troops to Somalia in order to replace the Ethiopian forces.
Iraqi National Security Advisor Muwaffiq Rubai said that Ayatollah Ali al-Sistani stressed the need to apply the law on all citizens without discrimination and to disarm citizens so that weapons remain in the hands of the government alone.
سيد السيستاني على مجمل الوضع الأمني في العراق وبالخصوص الوضع الأمني.
Sistani spoke on the security situation throughout Iraq and specifically the security conditions in Baghdad. His Eminence insisted on implementing the law on all citizens equally and without any differentiation, without looking at the affiliation or identity of any citizen.
وأي هوية لأي مواطن خلفيته ما هي يجب أن لا ينظر إلى أي خلفية وإنما يعمل القانون ويطبق قانون والنظام.
We must not look at citizens' backgrounds. Rather, law and order should be applied to all citizens equally. His Eminence also stressed that weapons should only be in the hands of the state, and all residents who have unlicensed weapons should be disarmed.
مرخص لهم في بحمل السلاح.
من جهة أخرى أكد موفق رباعي أن الخطة
موفق رباعي also confirmed that the security plan is moving forward and will produce significant results in the upcoming weeks to provide security for the citizens.
الخطة الأمنية إن شاء الله في تصاعد وفي يعني سوف ترون إن شاء الله في الأسابيع القليلة القادمة.
The security plan is moving forward, and God willing, you will see good results in the coming weeks. Not just raids, not just patrols, not just checkpoints. God willing, the plan will include special operations to provide security and safety for citizens and return the displaced residents to their homes in the city of Baghdad.
في مدينة بغداد بشكل خاص.
التقى اليوم العاهل الأردني عبد الله الثاني في القاهرة الرئيس المصري حسني مبارك لبحث.
Today in Cairo, the Jordanian King Abdullah II met with the Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak to discuss the current situation in the region. Their talks are expected to address the deteriorating situation in the Palestinian territories, taking into account the increasingly tense political and security situation. They will also discuss coordinating their positions and efforts aimed at reviving the Middle East peace process, as well as the developments in Iraq. In the opening of his first cabinet meeting in the Gaza Strip after returning from the Hajj, Palestinian Prime Minister Ismail Haniyeh criticized the Executive Committee of the Palestinian Liberation Organization for being biased against his government. He also held the committee responsible for the recent acts and the internal violence. He called on the committee to take a more objective approach in dealing with events in the Palestinian territories.
وطالب اللجنة باعتماد طريقة أكثر موضوعية في نقلها للأحداث في الأراضي الفلسطينية.
اللجنة التنفيذية التي تنصب نفسها دائما قاضيا.
The executive committee always places itself in the position of the judge, the referee, and the opponent, all at the same time. The executive committee always holds the government and certain Palestinian parties responsible for what is going on. I reiterate the need for the executive committee to stop these kinds of statements and look at the Palestinian condition comprehensively with two eyes open and not just one eye. Second, we must avoid publicly airing disputes relating to administrative affairs. We recently noticed that strictly administrative issues were published by different media outlets and newspapers. This contradicts the most basic administrative practices. It is inappropriate conduct between the government and the president.
وهذا يتناقض مع أبسط الأعراف الإدارية والعلاقات بين الحكومة وبين الرئاسة.
Bush's new plan for Iraq was preceded by a new security plan by the Iraqi government for Baghdad, which was initiated by an American shelling of Haifa Street. The American army justified this military operation, during which 50 people were killed and 20 others were arrested, by saying that its soldiers were exposed to gunfire and different kinds of weapons in the area. These military operations took place yesterday, but today 3 other people were killed in separate incidents, and the bodies of 9 unknown individuals were found in different areas of Baghdad. In Sadr city, a mortar shell attack on a residential area killed 4 members from the same family and caused damages to homes in the targeted area. The death that is constantly threatening the lives of Iraqis has become the imminent fate of Saddam Hussein's non-biological brother, Barzan al-Tikriti, and the former president of al-Thawra court, Awad al-Bandar. The Iraqi government said that they will be hanged within days and that they will not be humiliated during the execution in an attempt to minimize the wide-scale condemnation that was caused by the leaked images of Saddam Hussein's execution. We leave you with Abdul Latif Omar from Baghdad.
Today, tomorrow or the day after tomorrow might be the last day in the lives of Barazan al-Takriti and Awad al-Bandar. According to the Iraqi government, they might be executed before the weekend. The Iraqi government insists that the death sentence should be carried out as soon as possible, despite opposition by the defense team, which demands that the execution be postponed until the 25th of January. The defense team submitted a petition to the Superior Criminal Court demanding that the execution be postponed until the end of the period that was originally given to the defense team to retry the defendants or present new evidence that may prove that those defendants were not guilty.
With all due respect, what you are saying does not make any sense. This is a person who fell from his throne. It is over. Everything is history.
The execution of al-Barazan and al-Bandar were postponed several times after the Iraqi government received criticism because of the method and the approach that were used to execute Saddam Hussein. This leads one to think that the execution of al-Barazan and al-Bandar will be very different as to avoid sectarian anger.
All the execution sentences that will be issued by Iraqi courts, including special criminal courts, will be carried out in a different way than the way in which Saddam was executed. Some believed that Saddam was about to make a political deal in exchange for his release.
They should not release any images of the execution. They should just announce that the execution took place and that is it.
The Iraqi government insists that the execution sentence must be carried out despite the delays. There are concerns that new images of executions may have repercussions in both the Iraqi and Arab streets.
The head of the UN's nuclear watchdog agency urged the international community to find negotiated solutions to end the standoffs over Iran's nuclear program. The International Atomic Energy Agency chief, Mohammed al-Baradei, said these questions can only be settled through direct negotiations with the concerned parties. Al-Baradei was quoted as saying by Algerian government daily El Mujahid. Two inspectors of the International Atomic Energy Agency have inspected Iran's Isfahan nuclear facility. This is the first IAEA inspection going on after the 1737 sanctions resolution against Iran adopted by the UN. The IAEA inspectors will stay in Iran for a week. About 2,510 person-day inspections have been made of Iran's atomic facilities. The former European Union Commissioner Chris Patten has called on the West to accept a nuclear Iran. In an article published in the London-based Times Daily, Patten said, "The only solution to Tehran's nuclear standoff is for the West to accept Iran developing a civilian nuclear capability." He underlined the West's policy against Iran and the sanctions slapped on the country will not affect its pursuit of peaceful nuclear technology. Islamabad is calling for enhancement of cooperation with Tehran in removing problems facing the world of Islam. In a meeting with Iran's ambassador to Islamabad, Pakistan's religions minister Ejazul Haq said Iran plays a crucial role in the international positive developments, hailing Iranian president's policies as far as the nation's legal rights is concerned. Iraqi and U.S. troops chased militants in and out of alleys and conducted house-to-house searches on Wednesday in a central Baghdad neighborhood, a day after fierce fighting that killed 50 insurgents.
An Iraqi army officer said 15 suspects had been arrested in Baghdad's troubled Haifa Street section. Meanwhile, bombings and shootings across Iraq killed at least 21 people early Wednesday, including 3 U.S. soldiers in combat. In another development today, gunmen ambushed a bus southwest of the Iraqi capital and shot dead 9 pilgrims returning from Mecca. Officials said 14 others were also wounded in the attack. Meanwhile, President Jalal Talabani said the government should delay the execution of 2 of Saddam's co-defendants. Iraqi officials have said the 2 men were expected to be hanged in the coming days, but no date has been released.
News sources in Iraq have revealed that the United States and Britain have drawn up a plan to take control of Iraqi oil reserves for 30 years. The Iraqi newspaper Al-Mashriq wrote Wednesday, the new measures adopted by American and British companies in Iraq's oil industry have shed light on the real aim of attacking Iraq. According to the daily, the oil giants Shell and British Petroleum, together with another company, are to cash in on the presence of the occupation force in Iraq to sign unfair deals in a bid to get their hands on Iraq's crude reserves for the next 3 decades.
Despite the fact that the current government in Iran is conservative, especially when it comes to issues relating to women, it has permitted them to drive cars. Meanwhile, the Iranian authorities have allowed for the establishment of dozens of driving schools, which have helped increase the number of Iranian women drivers.
الممنوعات على النساء في بعض الدول مسموح بها في إيران.
What is prohibited for women in some Muslim countries is permitted in Iran, which is often perceived as a strict country that oppresses women's freedoms. Take the example of driving. The authorities have created institutions to train people how to drive, and consequently more women have applied for driving licenses than men.
النساء اللواتي يقودن السيارات وخصوصا في طهران أكثر.
More women than men drive cars, especially in Tehran. You can see this on the streets. Dozens of driving schools have been in existence for many years.
سنوات طويلة.
في هذه المؤسسة عدد من الصفوف الدراسية التي تضم المعلمين والأدوات اللازمة.
In this school, there are a number of classrooms, instructors, and tools that are needed to learn how to drive. Students also need to learn road signs that every driver needs to know. They are international road signs. It is not possible to obtain a driver license without knowing them and memorizing their every detail.
وحفظها بشكل دقيق.
Licenses are given to people after they go through a period of training. However, we do not issue them here. Male and female drivers must pass an exam that is supervised by the police administration, which is affiliated with the Ministry of Interior.
The instructor sits next to the driver. He also has a clutch, gas, and brake pedal, but he rarely uses them because the students have gone through theoretical and practical training before going out and driving in the streets.
ورغم أزمة السير الخانقة في طهران، فإن هذه المدارس تخرج مئات السائقين والسائقات.
Despite the extremely heavy traffic in Tehran, these schools graduate hundreds of new male and female drivers. Similarly, Iranian factories produce tens of thousands of cars a year, selling them in a way that makes it easy for citizens, especially students and ordinary workers, to pay for them. Hundreds of driving schools in Iran operate in parallel with the dozens of companies that annually manufacture thousands of cars of varying models. Perhaps people are learning how to drive cars more than they are learning anything else.
عبد السلام عاقل قناة أبو ظبي طهران.
The opposition's Plan B has entered its second day. Demonstrators responding to a call by Lebanon's General Federation of Labor Unions gathered today outside the Energy Ministry in Beirut in protest against the government-approved economic reform plan aimed at lifting war-ravaged Lebanon out of its $41 billion public debt. More in this report. In a wider campaign to topple the government, the Hezbollah-led opposition kicked off a second day of protests against economic reforms proposed by Prime Minister Fouad al-Sannura. Today, protesters gathered around the Energy Ministry in the Nahr region. The demonstrators, while less in number than yesterday's, were mainly students from pro-Hezbollah schools and were participating in the demonstration upon a request from the party. Sources told An-Nahar Daily that cars equipped with sound magnifiers roamed a number of streets in Beirut's southern suburbs, urging people to participate extensively in today's riot. Meanwhile, the internal security forces declared that they would be blocking the road extending from the Sayyad roundabout, President Lahoud's Avenue, in direction of the port, all the way to the highway adjacent to the Beirut Forum as of 10 this morning until the end of the protest. They said the roads from the Sayyad roundabout to Ashrafiyeh, as well as Corniche Nahar and Adliyeh, were open. The opposition has lent its support to the CGTL Labour Confederation's call to protest as part of an escalation in its own efforts to force a change in the government. It has rejected the economic reform plan proposed by Sanyura, seizing upon the cost of the social reforms proposed by Sanyura's administration, and accused those in power of sparking the economic crisis that has seen Lebanon plunge $41 billion in debt. The head of the labor unions, Ghassan Ghusn, promised that further measures would follow in the days to come, despite attempts by Sanyura to meet with Ghusn and discuss the economic reform plan. For his part, the head of the Lebanese forces, Samir Jaja, after a meeting with Sanyura yesterday, said the riots would not produce any results. He urged the opposition to propose an alternate plan to the Paris 3, stressing that the government was open to all sorts of propositions. He also urged the opposition to call for a general strike if they really thought they were the majority. Jaja also called on House Speaker Nabih Berri to assume his responsibilities and convene a parliament session to discuss Lebanon's problems. But Berri, in a statement, said the parliament was not an ordinary session and that there was no decree to convene an extraordinary session, stressing that the present government was unconstitutional.
Tawfiq Fawal is a 42-year-old Lebanese man who has been locked up in Syrian jails for a very long time. Sadly, the tears of Fawal's family and loved ones have dried up while waiting for his safe return.
المعتقلون اللبنانيون في السجون السورية.
The story of Lebanese detainees in Syrian jails is a drama that continues to be played out. More than 197 Lebanese families are anxiously waiting for the safe return of their missing children who have been locked up in Syrian jails for decades. Our crew arrived at one of the detainees' homes and interviewed his family. The family told us a dramatic account of what had happened to their son, who remains locked up behind bars in one of the notorious Syrian jails. Tawfiq Fuad Fawal is a Lebanese man who was born in Tripoli in 1965. In 1985, Fawal, who was then a student at the American University in Beirut, was abducted by the Syrian intelligence agency for allegedly taking part in the killing of one of its agents. According to Fawal's father, a unit from the Syrian military intelligence agency, headed by Major Ra'ed Muhammad Khalouf, abducted his son at midnight on January 9, 1985, and took him to the American school. Fawal was later transferred to Anjar and then to Palestine prison in Mizzi, where his family saw him 3 times. During its last visit, the family was assured that its son would be released soon, in light of testimonies by the slain intelligence officer's son, who testified that Fawal was not present at the time his father was killed. This declaration was addressed to General Imad Itlas by Fawal's father, agreeing to pay reparations for the family of the deceased in exchange for a lesser sentence to Fawal. However, the deal was mysteriously terminated.
كان يسمع هذه الأقوال رئيس المخفور، نقلها بدوره إلى علي دوبة.
The head of the prison authority told Ali Duba, the head of the intelligence agency, that the slain officer's son testified on Tawfiq's behalf, confirming that my son was not involved in the killing of the officer. Ali Duba expressed disappointment at the news because it made him look bad. Duba ordered a cover-up of the facts, and we were denied access to any of the files pertaining to our son's case.
Meanwhile, Fawal's father continues to write letters to various security and intelligence agencies and media outlets, pleading for his son's release and safe return. The desperate father also wrote to Syria's President Bashar al-Assad asking him to help secure the release of his son. However, all these letters did not produce any fruitful results. In 1998, the Syrian authorities said that it would release some 181 Lebanese detainees. A Lebanese official informed Fawwal's family by phone that their son would be released. The family anxiously waited for their son's release, but the outcome was disappointing. Fawwal's family inquired about the reasons why their son was not among the freed prisoners. In explaining that, the Syrian authorities said that 11 detainees, including Fawwal, were chosen randomly from the list and were bused back to Ishtura to their jails. In December 2000, the Syrian authority also released 44 Lebanese detainees, excluding Fawwal. This is the end of our story, and the only thing left for Fawwal's father to do is to send yet another message to the proper authorities, pleading for his son's release.
U.S. forces hunting al-Qaeda terrorists hit 4 sites in airstrikes in southern Somalia today. A Somali official said the raids occurred close to the Kenyan border, where fugitive extremists are believed to be holed up after being routed by Ethiopian troops defending Somalia's interim government. The Pentagon also confirmed an attack on Monday in which a Somali official claimed senior al-Qaeda terrorist Fazul Abdul Mohammed was killed. The 32-year-old Fazul was wanted in connection with the 1998 bombings of U.S. embassies in Kenya and Tanzania that left 224 people dead. He also is suspected of planning the car bombing of the Paradise Beach Hotel in Mombasa that killed 3 Israelis and the failed attempt to shoot down an Israeli airliner in 2002. The state attorney's office has reportedly decided to open a full-fledged criminal investigation against Prime Minister Ehud Olmert. The probe is expected to examine Olmert's alleged intervention in the government tender for the sale of the controlling interest in Bank Leumi. The Prime Minister was outraged to receive the news during his state visit to China. We get the details from IBA's Leah Stern.
Outrage. That was the feeling expressed by senior aides to Prime Minister Ehud Olmert when they heard of Attorney General Menachem Mazouz's plan to announce a criminal inquiry against the Prime Minister without informing him in advance. According to reports, Mazouz will announce the investigation when Olmert returns from his state trip to China. The state attorney's office will apparently investigate Olmert's alleged intervention in the sale of a controlling share of Bank Leumi. According to the allegation, the Prime Minister intervened on behalf of 2 friends with whom he also had business connections, Daniel Abraham and Frank Lowy, in the tender for the privatization of Bank Leumi. Officials in the Olmert entourage say that the Prime Minister was placed in an embarrassing position in China. And now, instead of focusing on security issues, Olmert is having to respond to irresponsible reports from Israel. They also called it completely unacceptable that the Prime Minister learned of the probe only after a media advisor read about it on the internet. Olmert is also being investigated in the case involving the purchase of his private home in the German colony in Jerusalem, selling below the market price in exchange for influence at City Hall, all while serving as mayor of Jerusalem. Another case involves allegations that Olmert made political appointments in the Small Business Authority while serving as Minister of Industry and Trade. An unnamed senior justice official today said that from a public and legal perspective, Olmert has no choice but to resign if a criminal investigation is launched against him. Another justice source said, someone with such a black cloud hanging over them cannot lead. Olmert will be too busy defending his name instead of ruling the country. This is Leah Stern for IBA News.
The views expressed on Mosaic are those of the participating broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. Please visit linktv.org/Mosaic for more information about these broadcasters or to view previous Mosaic programs, obtain program transcripts, or receive the weekly Mosaic Intelligence Report. Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Additional support is provided by the Firedoll Foundation, the Otto Haas Charitable Trust, and by committed Link TV viewers like you. If you value this program, please send your tax-deductible contribution to Link TV, either through the website or the mailing address listed on your screen. This program was brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. television network devoted to global and national news, with uncompromising documentaries and diverse cultural programs. Programs which connect you to the world.